The Dryad. We are traveling to Paris to the exhibition. Now we are there. That was a journey, a flight without magic. We flew on the wings of steam over the sea and across the land. Yes, our time is the time of fairy tales. We are in the midst of Paris, in a great hotel. Blooming flowers ornament the staircases and soft carpets the floors. Our room is a very cozy one, and through the open balcony door, we have a view of a great square. Spring lives down there. It has come to Paris and arrived at the same time with us. It has come in the shape of a glorious young chestnut tree, with delicate leaves newly opened. How the tree gleams, dressed in its spring garb, before all the other trees in the place. One of these latter had been struck out of the list of living trees. It lies on the ground with roots exposed. On the place where it stood, the young chestnut tree is to be planted and to flourish. It still stands towering aloft on the heavy wagon which has brought it this morning a distance of several miles to Paris. For years it had stood there in the protection of a mighty oak tree, under which the old venerable clergyman had often sat, with children listening to his stories. The young chestnut tree had also listened to the stories, for the Dryad who lived in it was a child also. She remembered the time when the tree was so little that it only projected a short way above the grass and ferns around. These were as tall as they would ever be, but the tree grew every year and enjoyed the air and the sunshine and drank the dew and the rain. Several times it was also, as it must be, well shaken by the wind and the rain, for that is a part of education. The Dryad rejoiced in her life and rejoiced in the sunshine and the singing of the birds, but she was most rejoiced at human voices. She understood the language of men as well as she understood that of animals. Butterflies, cockchafers, dragonflies, everything that could fly came to pay a visit. They could all talk. They told of the village, of the vineyard, of the forest, of the old castle with its parks and canals and ponds. Down in the water dwelt also living beings, which in their way could fly under the water from one place to another, beings with knowledge and delineation. They said nothing at all. They were so clever. And the swallow who had dived told about the pretty little goldfish, of the thick turbot, the fat brill, and the old carp. The swallow could describe all that very well, but self is the man. She said one ought to see these things one's self. But how was the Dryad ever to see such beings? She was obliged to be satisfied with being able to look over the beautiful country and see the busy industry of men. It was glorious, but most glorious of all, when the old clergyman sat under the oak tree and talked about France and of the great deeds of her sons and daughters whose names will be mentioned with admiration through all the times. Then the Dryad heard of the shepherd girl Joan of Arc and of Charlotte Corday. She heard about Henry IV and Napoleon I. She heard names whose echo sounds in the hearts of the people. The village children listened attentively, and the Dryad no less attentively. She became a school child with the rest. In the clouds that went sailing by, she saw picture by picture everything that she heard talked about. The cloudy sky was her picture book. She felt so happy in beautiful France, the fruitful land of genius, with the crater of freedom. But in her heart, the sting remained that the bird, that every animal that could fly was much better off than she. Even the fly could look about more in the world far beyond the Dryad's horizon. France was so great and so glorious, but she could only look across a little piece of it. The land stretched out worldwide, with vineyards, forests, and great cities. Of all these, Paris was the most splendid and the mightiest. The birds could get there, but she never. Among the village children was a little ragged, poor girl, but a pretty one to look at. She was always laughing or singing and twining red flowers in her black hair. "Don't go to Paris," the old clergyman warned her. "Poor child, if you go there, it will be your ruin." But she went for all that. The Dryad often thought of her, for she had the same wish and felt the same longing for the great city. The Dryad's tree was bearing its first chestnut blossoms. The birds were twittering round them in the most beautiful sunshine. Then a stately carriage came rolling along that way, and in it sat a grand lady driving the spirited, light-footed horses. On the back seat, a little smart groom balanced himself. The Dryad knew the lady, and the old clergyman knew her also. He shook his head gravely when he saw her and said, "So you went there, after all, and it was your ruin, poor Mary." "That one poor?" thought the Dryad. "No, she wears a dress fit for a countess." She had become one in the city of magic changes. Oh, if only I were there, amidst all the splendor and pomp. They shine up into the very clouds at night. When I look up, I can tell in what direction the town lies. Towards that direction, the Dryad looked every evening. She saw in the dark night the gleaming cloud on the horizon. In the clear moonlight nights, she missed the sailing clouds, which showed her pictures of the city and pictures from history. The child grasped at the picture books. The Dryad grasped at the cloud world, her thought book. A sudden clearless sky was for her a blank leaf, and for several days she had only had such leaves before her. It was in the warm summertime. Not a breeze moved through the glowing hot days. Every leaf, every flower lay as if it were torpid, and the people seemed torpid too. Then the clouds arose and covered the region round about where the gleaming mist announced that here lies Paris. The clouds piled themselves up like a chain of mountains, hurried on through the air, and spread themselves abroad over the whole landscape, as far as the Dryad's eye could reach. Like enormous blue-black blocks of rock, the clouds lay piled on top of one another. Gleams of lightning shot forth from them. "These are also the servants of the Lord God," as the old clergyman had said. And there came a bluish, dazzling flash of lightning, a lightning up as if from the sun itself, which could burst blocks of rock asunder. The lightning struck and split to the root the old venerable oak tree. The crown fell asunder. It seemed as if the tree were stretching forth its arms to clasp the messengers of the light. No bronze cannon can sound over the land at the birth of a royal child as the thunder sounded at the death of the old oak. The rain streamed down, a refreshing wind was blowing, the storm had gone by, and there was quite a holiday glow on all things. The old clergyman spoke a few words for honorable remembrance, and a painter made a drawing as a lasting record of the tree. "Everything passes away," said the Dryad, "passes away like a cloud and never comes back." The old clergyman, too, did not come back. The green roof of his school was gone, and his teaching chair had vanished. The children did not come, but autumn came, and winter came, and then spring also. In all this change of seasons, the Dryad looked towards the region where at night Paris gleamed with its bright mist far on the horizon. Forth from the town rushed engine after engine, train after train, whistling and screaming at all hours in the day. In the evening, towards midnight, at daybreak, and all the day through, came the trains. Out of each one and into each one streamed people from the country of every king. A new wonder of the world had summoned them to Paris. In what form did this wonder exhibit itself? A splendid blossom of art and industry has unfolded itself in the Champ de Mars, a gigantic sunflower from whose petals one can learn geography and statistics and become as wise as a Lord Mayor. From here go forth health and life for thousands upon thousands up yonder. Our time is the time of progress, with its manifold blessings. Such was the opinion and the speech of men, but not of those creatures who had been born here, and who built and dwelt here, of the rats, namely, who were squeaking to one another in the clefts of a crumbling wall, quite plainly, and in a way the Dryad understood well. A big old father rat with his tail bitten off was relieving his feelings in loud squeaks, and his family gave their tribute of concurrence to every word he said. I am disgusted with this man-mewing, with these outbursts of ignorance. A fine magnificence, truly, all made up of gas and petroleum. I can't eat such stuff as that. Everything here is so fine and bright now that one's ashamed of oneself without exactly knowing why. Ah, if we only lived in the days of tallow candles! And it does not lie so very far behind us. That was a romantic time, as one may say. What are you talking of there? Asked the Dryad. I have never seen you before. What is it you are talking about? Of the glorious days that are gone, said the rat. Of the happy time of our great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers. Then it was a great thing to get down here. That was a rat's nest quite different from Paris. Mother Plague used to live here then. She killed people, but never rats. Robbers and smugglers could breathe freely here. Here was the meeting place of the most interesting personalities, whom one now only gets to see in the theaters where they act melodrama up above. The time of romance is gone, even in our rat's nest, and here also fresh air and petroleum have broken in. Thus squeaked the rat. He squeaked in honor of the old time when Mother Plague was still alive. A carriage stopped, a kind of open omnibus, drawn by swift horses. The company mounted and drove away along the Boulevard de Sebastopol. That is to say, the underground boulevard, over which the well-known crowded street of that name extended. The carriage disappeared in the twilight. The Dryad disappeared, lifted to the cheerful freshness above. Here, and not below in the vaulted passages, filled with heavy air, the wonder-work must be found which she was to seek in her short lifetime. It must gleam brighter than all the gas flames, stronger than the moon that was just gliding past. Yes, certainly, she saw it yonder in the distance. It gleamed before her, and twinkled and glittered like the evening star in the sky. She saw a glittering portal open that led to a little garden, where all was brightness and dance music. Colored lamps surrounded little lakes, in which were water plants of colored metal, from whose flowers jets of water spurted up. Beautiful weeping willows, real products of spring, hung their fresh branches over these lakes, like a fresh green, transparent, and yet screening veil. In the bushes burnt an open fire, throwing a red twilight over the quiet huts of branches into which the sounds of music penetrated, an ear-tickling, intoxicating music that sent the blood coursing through the veins. Beautiful girls in festival attire, with pleasant smiles on their lips and the light spirit of youth in their hearts, Marys with roses in their hair, but without carriage and postilion, flitted to and fro in the wild dance. Where were the heads? Where were the feet? As if stung by tarantulas, they sprang, laughed, rejoiced, as if in their ecstasies they were going to embrace all the world. The Dryad felt herself torn with them into the whirl of the dance. Round her delicate foot clung the silken boot, chestnut brown in color, like the ribbon that floated from her hair down upon her bare shoulders. The green silk dress waved in large folds, but did not entirely hide the pretty foot and ankle. Had she come to the enchanted garden of Armida? What was the name of the place? The name glittered in gas jets over the entrance. It was Mobile. The soaring upwards of rockets, the splashing of fountains, and the popping of champagne corks accompanied the wild, bacchantic dance. Over the whole glittered the moon through the air, clear but with a somewhat crooked face. A wild joviality seemed to rush through the Dryad, as if she were intoxicated with opium. Her eyes spoke, her lips spoke, but the sound of violins and flutes drowned the sound of her voice. Her partner whispered words to her that she did not understand, nor do we understand them. He stretched out his arms to draw her to him, but he embraced only the empty air. The Dryad had been carried away like a rose leaf on the wind. Before her she saw a flame in the air, a flashing light, high up on a tower. The beacon light shone from the goal of her longing, shone from the red lighthouse tower of the Fata Morgana of the Champ de Mars. Thither she was carried by the wind. She circled around the tower. The workers thought it was a butterfly that had come too early, and that now sank down dying. The moon shone bright. Gas lamps spread light around, through the halls, over the all-world buildings scattered about, over the rose hills and the rocks produced by human ingenuity, from which waterfalls, driven by the power of Master Bloodless, fell down. The caverns of the sea, the depths of the lakes, the kingdom of the fishes were opened here. Men walked as in the depths of the deep pond and held converse with the sea in the diving bell of glass. The water pressed against the strong glass walls above and on every side. The polypi, eel-like living creatures, had fastened themselves to the bottom and stretched out arms fathoms long for prey. A big turbot was making himself broad in front, quietly enough, but not without casting some suspicious glances aside. A crab clambered over him, looking like a gigantic spider, while the shrimps wandered about in restless haste like the butterflies and moths of the sea. In the fresh water grew water lilies, nymphaea and reeds. The goldfishes stood up below in rank and file, all turning their heads one way that the streaming water might flow into their mouths. Fat carps stared at the glass wall with stupid eyes. They knew that they were here to be exhibited, and that they had made the somewhat toilsome journey here in tubs filled with water. And they thought with dismay of the land sickness from which they had suffered so cruelly on the railway. They had come to see the exhibition and now contemplated it from their fresh or saltwater position. They looked attentively at the crowds of people who passed by them early and late. All the nations in the world, they thought, had made an exhibition of their inhabitants for the edification of the soles and headaches, pike and carp, that they might give their opinions upon the different kinds. "Those are scaly animals," said a little slimy whiting. "They put on scales 2 or 3 times a day, and they emit sounds which they call speaking. We don't put on scales, and we make ourselves understood in an easier way, simply by twitching the corners of our mouths and staring with our eyes. We have a lot of advantages over mankind." "But they have learned swimming of us," remarked a well-educated codling. "You must know, I come from the great sea outside. In the hot time of the year, the people yonder go into the water. First they take off their scales, and then they swim. They have learned from the frogs to kick out with their hind legs and row with their forepaws, but they can't hold out long. They want to be like us, but they can't come up to us. Poor people." And the fishes stared. They thought that the whole swarm of people whom they had seen in the bright daylight were still moving around them. They were certain they still saw the same forms that had first caught their attention. A pretty barbel with spotted skin and an enviable round back declared that the human fry were still there. I can see a well-set-up human figure. Quite well. She was called Contume's Lady, or something of that kind. She had a mouth and staring eyes like ours, and a great balloon at the back of her head and something like a shut-up umbrella in front. There were a lot of dangling bits of seaweed hanging about. She ought to take all the rubbish off and go as we do. Then she would look something like a respectable barbel, as far as a person is possible to look like one. What's become of that one whom they drew away with the hook? He sat on a wheelchair and had paper and pen and ink and wrote down everything. They called him a writer. They're going about with him still, said a hoary old maid of carp, who carried her misfortune about with her so that she was quite hoarse. In her youth, she had once swallowed a hook and still swam patiently about with it in her gullet. A writer? That means, as we fishes describe it, a kind of cuttle or inkfish of men. Thus the fishes gossiped in their own way, but in the artificial water grotto the laborers were busy, who were obliged to take advantage of the hours of night to get their work done by daybreak. They accompanied with blows of their hammers and songs the parting words of the vanishing Dryad. So, at least I have seen you, you pretty goldfishes. Yes, I know you. I have known about you a long time in my home. The swallow told me about you. How beautiful you are. How delicate and shiny.